Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
If you're wondering why you're hearing and reading a lot of strained metaphors about Canada's Prime Minister needing to take a swim in the lake or a walk on the beach, well, it's because we in the media absolutely love the idea of history repeating. In February of 1984, Trudeau's father, then Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, decided that he would go for what has become a legendary walk in the snow. It was on that walk, he later said, that he decided that he would not run again in the next election. At the time, inflation was high. Canadians were struggling with affordability, and the polls said the elder Trudeau was deeply unpopular and would likely lose badly to the Conservatives in the next election. So you can see where I'm going with this, where literally everyone is going with this. The column headlines write themselves. So far, however, despite all of the conditions that he shares with his father's situation, Justin Trudeau has shown no plans to follow those snowy footsteps. After a huge by-election loss in a Liberal stronghold, however, there are many in his own party who believe his exit may be the only way to stave off a Conservative blowout. So why is Trudeau moving forward as leader into the next election, at least for now? What is the Liberal Party doing internally to either help improve his chances or perhaps to change his mind and show him the door? Would a new leader even help the Liberals at this point? And if so, who would it be? Put simply, though, will Trudeau stay or will he go? I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings. This is The Big Story. Stephen Maher is a Canadian journalist, a political analyst, and author of the newly published The Prince, the Turbulent Reign of Justin Trudeau, a reign that may or may not be coming to an end, Stephen.
Well, it hasn't yet, but every day people are speculating about it.
Well, let's go back to when the speculation really ramped up. As a political analyst, what was your immediate gut reaction to the Liberals losing what appeared to be an incredibly safe Toronto seat in a recent by-election?
That's really not good for Justin Trudeau. Holy smokes. This is not good. And it's also not good for Chrystia Freeland either. So for both of them, their political partnership has been crucial. Significantly during the NAFTA negotiations, they worked together very well and largely had the support of the business community, of even Conservatives were sort of happy with the way all of that worked out. But we see them running into a brick wall at full speed here in Toronto, St. Paul's.
When you say how bad this is for Trudeau and what it might lead people to want, you're somebody who just wrote an entire book on the man. What is your sense of how he would or how he will respond to this loss, which many people in his own party and lots of people not in his party are hanging right on him?
Well, I mean, we've seen his response, which is to say, oh, we've heard the message and we have to work harder. And there were 2 letters from caucus members, one email from Wayne Long, a New Brunswick MP who's not running again, saying Trudeau should leave, and another email from George Shahal, an Edmonton MP, saying that there should be an immediate caucus meeting to discuss all this. There has not been a caucus meeting. It appears there will not be a caucus meeting. A spokesperson for Trudeau said it's just not possible to schedule a meeting of the National Caucus this summer. So it seems that Trudeau is saying, no, I'm not going to get together and with MPs from across the country so that they can browbeat me. And so he's playing for time, and all the members of parliament are on the barbecue circuit. There's little doubt that they'll be hearing from Liberals that Liberals think it's time for Trudeau to go. So I don't see any obvious events that will force Trudeau's hand before the autumn. So we seem to be in kind of a holding pattern.
And what are you hearing from Liberals inside the party about how much of this party is still behind him?
Well, there's sort of two views on this. Grassroots Liberals, including people who are grateful to him and who like him very much, think that he should go, that Canadians are fatigued. They're just tired of him, basically. It's time for someone with a new approach, a new face. And then there are people who think it's too late. We have to run this guy in the next election. We don't really have any choice. There's no point using up some other potential leader on what looks like it's going to be a disastrous loss to the Conservatives. So, like it or not, we're kind of stuck with him for the next election, in part because a leadership race now would be very difficult with a sitting prime minister who the candidates would have to criticize because they'd be offering a different program, and it would be taking place while many Canadians are extremely upset over events in the Middle East, which could end up dominating any leadership race. So it really is a puzzle. If you were trying to figure out a way to get rid of Trudeau and get a new leader in there, even if Trudeau wanted to go, there would be a lot of difficult things they would have to do right before that can even happen.
How difficult is it to force out a leader like Trudeau who doesn't seem to want to go, if there was that movement within the party for a new leader?
Virtually impossible. The membership of the party, there's no process that they can initiate to get rid of Trudeau. I mean, in a parliamentary system, the parliamentary caucus fundamentally has the right to decide who its leader will be. You know, so in the United Kingdom, for instance, you saw these preemptive leadership changes driven by caucus politics. Theoretically, it can happen in Canadian politics, but the parties and the membership have been so strengthened at the expense of the caucus over the years that there is no precedent for that happening in Canadian politics, and it seems very unlikely. So what the caucus can do is make life miserable for him,
right,
in the hope that he decides that he's got to leave. But we have not seen the will to do that. They may think that would be unwise, that they're just stuck with him and that they are resolved to losing in the next election, which is some distance off. So that means they can keep getting their paychecks and enjoying their lives as politicians for now.
Given what you've written and reported around Trudeau in your book and elsewhere about, how he views himself and his family's legacy, what do you think it would take for him to make that decision, since it's going to have to be his decision, clearly, to step aside? There's obviously a precedent with regards to his father making a very similar decision at a fairly similar time in his career, right?
Yes, and that was precipitated by people close to him coming to him and saying, we don't think that this is going the right way, and we think it's best for the party if you leave, at which point he took a walk in the snow, the famous walk in the snow.
Right.
So there are people, Dominic LeBlanc, Tom Pitfield, Michael Pitfield's son, Mark Miller, Katie Telford. There are people who Justin Trudeau talks to and trusts. And if those people all started telling him, we think you should go, then presumably he would listen to that. What we see with prime ministers is usually they don't do that. Most prime ministers, they like being prime minister. They live in hope of turning things around. And so they hang on. That's what normally happens. Justin Trudeau is an unusually calculating communicator. He is not going to reveal his inner thoughts to us about this casually or by mistake. So I think he's basically unreadable, except in his actions. And so far, he is acting like someone who intends to hang on and run in the next election.
Do you see any parallels, particularly after the by-election in Canada and the debate in the United States, between Trudeau and President Biden, who is obviously right now facing a ton of push to gracefully exit the race and preserve his legacy rather than presiding over a historic loss? Like, to me, there's different reasons behind it, but they seem very similar.
They do. And the dynamic is quite similar in that I saw someone describe it on Twitter yesterday in the United States as a murder-suicide pact between the party and the leader. So Biden is saying, if you blow me up, right? If you don't back down, people will see you don't have confidence in me and we're going to lose the election. So you got to get on side because I'm going to be the candidate and you don't want Trump. And that message seems to have been received. Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who are probably the two most important leaders on the progressive side of the party, both came out and said, this is closed. He's our nominee. We support him. The stakes are lower in Canada.
Thankfully.
Yes, thank goodness for that. The players don't hit as hard. It's all much milder. And there is nothing like the groundswell that we saw after the debate within the Liberal Party of Canada.
Do we know, and I mean, I'm asking this question in reference to Trudeau, but it could also easily be asked towards Biden, do we actually know if a leader stepping aside when the party is trailing actually makes a difference or even improves things?
Well, it depends. In the case of Canada, I think the Liberals might be better off with a different leader because Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, appears to have been grown in a vat for the purpose of defeating Justin Trudeau. His whole career, his whole electoral plan has all been designed around the moment when he will dispatch Justin Trudeau. And because so many people are so exasperated with Justin Trudeau, particularly people in the parts of the country that make a lot of money from oil and gas and agriculture, there's a very strong sense that they need to get rid of this person. If the Liberals replace him with someone else, then there is a possibility that the conversation will be about something else. We don't know what, but something else. And so it seems to me that it might be good for the Liberals to make that change, and it might be good for the country because an election campaign that's just a referendum about whether people are tired of Trudeau or not won't tell us very much.
Don't we already know the answer to that anyway?
Yeah, that's the problem. If election is supposed to be about how we govern ourselves, then having an election to get rid of Trudeau seems like kind of a waste of everybody's time. But the problem for the Liberals is they do not know that they've got a better alternative. And of course, they're Liberals. They're thinking about what's best for the Liberal Party of Canada.
Well, that was my next question. And you mentioned off the top when we discussed the by-election that this is not great for Chrystia Freeland either. And she was once seen as kind of the next leader in waiting, but she's now so closely associated with Trudeau and the claps in the polls that, like, what else is out there?
We used to hear about her as a possible successor. One does not hear that very much anymore. She has struggled to connect with voters. She's been finance minister and deputy prime minister for years now. They brought out a big reset budget, which had a lot of interesting policy for, that ought to appeal to younger people and center-left voters in particularly, and it was expertly rolled out, and it did not move the dial. Her hand-picked candidate just lost in the riding north of hers, after a 25-point swing. So it seems obvious that she is not able to sell an economic message, that people have tuned her out as they have tuned out Justin Trudeau.
Right.
So there are a number of other people. Mark Carney is very interesting, but we've never seen him carry the puck into the corner. And until you see someone do that, there is no way of knowing whether they can do it or not. People will say, I think he'd be good because blah, 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 or I think he'd be bad because blah, blah, blah. We don't know. It's not knowable in advance. You can have an opinion, but we don't know. And the other people, Melanie Joly, Anita Anand, Champagne, Sean Fraser, Dominic LeBlanc, they all have pluses and minuses, and we don't know how they would do as leader. Until you're a leader, it's impossible to tell how people would do.
So what actually happens next on this? You mentioned there's not going to be a caucus meeting this summer. We're now waiting until everybody comes back to Ottawa in the fall, and the calls may or may not resume again. And also, what do you think will happen personally? If I made you bet as the author of the book, what does Trudeau do from here?
I had been thinking that he might go this summer because there's fairly detailed scenarios that I'm hearing from tuned-in Liberals. Well, if he could leave now, and then we could have a leadership convention over the summer and put a new leader in place in the fall. Every day that goes by without him leaving or announcing that he would leave, that starts to seem like a more of a distant possibility. You look at what's just happened, the drubbing that the incumbent governments took in France and the United Kingdom, and you think that it's not a good time for an incumbent to face re-election because of the overwhelming difficulty with cost of living. So if I had to bet right now, I'd say they're going to tough it out over the summer and hope that the economy gets better and hope that Gaza ends. There's peace or less war in the Middle East, and that they'll be hoping that the environment is better by the time the snow flies.
Well, you can't take a walk in the snow without snow.
Yeah. There's some strained metaphors that you see people make. Well, maybe he'll take a walk on the beach or a swim in the lake.
Right.
Yeah, he gets to decide, which in a way is fair because he's won 3 elections.
Yeah.
The Liberal Party was nowhere when he took it over, and he built the whole machine. In our leader-centric politics in Canada now, people voted for him, and he still has a legal mandate. It's starting to seem to me that that's not great for the country to have a leader who's so unpopular, but it's not up to me to decide. It's up to Justin Trudeau.
Stephen, as always, thank you for this and congratulations on the book.
Thank you very much.
Stephen Maher is the author of The Prince, The Turbulent Reign of Justin Trudeau, available now, wherever you get your books. Just like this podcast is available right now, wherever you get your podcasts, especially at thebigstorypodcast.ca, where you can search Stephen's name and find many of his previous appearances on this show. You can judge for yourself if those predictions were right or not. You can also send us feedback by sending an email to hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca or by calling 416-935-5935 and leaving us a voicemail. As I mentioned, we are in every single podcast player, and, well, you are in any podcast player that offers the chance to review or rate or share or do whatever. We encourage you to do it. It always helps other people find this show. Joseph Fish is the lead producer of The Big Story. Robin Simon is also a producer on this show. Our sound design this week was done by Christopher Clark. Stephanie Phillips is our showrunner. Diana Kay is our manager of business development. Mary Jubrin is our audience development lead, and I'm your host and executive producer, Jordan Heath Rawlings. Together, we're the Frequency Podcast Network, and we are a division of Rogers. Come Monday, we'll be back with a fresh big story. We'll talk then.